Hello everyone, and welcome to Who Cares, where we're going to discuss and debate the Doctor on his adventures through space and time.
So get ready for today's episode, which exceeds your daily recommended dose of Mark Gatiss, just like every other dose of Mark Gatiss.
I love Mark Gatiss. He's so lazier.
Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And as I said, this is Who Cares. Thanks for joining us on our newest review of Series 10 of Doctor Who, Empress of Mars, as Jake said, written by Mark Gatiss and also sort of written by Brian Hales. Not really, though. He's just credited because he invented the Ice Warriors. And Doctor Who is weird in that the creators of the various monsters for the series often retain the rights to those characters. For instance, Jake, did you know that Stephen Moffat owns the rights to the Paternoster Gang? And there are rumors once he leaves Doctor Who after this season, he may pursue a spin-off.
Are we surprised?
Also, actually, they weren't sure they were going to be able to retain the rights or get the rights back of the Daleks in Series 1 from 2005. So remember at the end of Series, I want to say 2, the Master made those ball things. I forget what they called them, but it turned out not to really be that. They helped him take over the world for a year.
I do remember.
Okay,
yes.
Those were actually supposed to replace the Daleks as like the big main enemy if they couldn't get the rights back to the Daleks, but they did, and the rest is history. So,
anyways, this is a little late because of the E3 thing. So if you haven't seen our E3 coverage, you can go to that. It was E3.
So, let's talk about the Empress of Mars. This episode, the premise, great original premise for an episode, actually. I just wish Mark Gatiss wasn't the guy to get assigned to this one. Premise is, there was an ice warrior of some sort that made friends with some people were they Victorian? They were probably Victorian.
They were Victorian, yeah.
Victorian Londoners or Englishmen, sorry, and took them to Mars in his spaceship, and they are basically trying to invade the planet and make Mars part of the British Empire. Now, that's a good idea. Humans being the invaders story is a great original idea in Doctor Who. Yeah. Unfortunately, what we ended up getting was a cliche mess of an episode. So
it was almost like a base siege, but also not that. And I honestly can't necessarily remember beats of this episode because there weren't really any.
It felt meandering and generic in the sense that the plot wasn't as important as the characters. This was a very character-focused episode in that it focused on the motivations of the characters.
Which could be good if they had interesting characters.
The problem is they were all written like cartoon characters. There are various schools of thought on Doctor Who. There are different people who look at it different ways. Mark Gatiss is one of the people who still writes Doctor Who sometimes like it's classic Who. In that I'm okay with cheesiness. Doctor Who needs some cheesiness. It's a part of the DNA of the show. But what counts as cheesy changes over time. You know what I mean? Sure, Doctor Who, Classic Who was cheesy at the time as well, but it's much cheesier now in retrospect. Mark Gatiss still writes to that level of cheesiness and that level of character development sometimes, as opposed to updating it.
Hold on, did you just accuse Mark Gatiss of character development?
Lack thereof. I was implying he does not achieve it.
I'm sure he'd be very offended if he thought that you perceived character development in one of his scripts.
Well, the episode opens with the Doctor, Bill, Nardole at NASA. Fine.
What do you mean? Nardole just gets there to leave.
Yeah. Also, Nardole, his character felt off in this episode. Am I the only one? It felt like there was genuine character development building with Nardole. And sure, he's the comic relief character, and he can be cowardly. Right. It can be cowardly sometimes, but as the series has progressed, we've seen him step up more and more and unveil more and more about the character. And in this episode, it felt like a complete regression back to, like, the Christmas special, where he is just bumbling, silly guy.
Yeah, I don't... why even have Nardole go there just to leave? Is it just so that they have a reason to be stranded to take the TARDIS away?
Yeah, it was a stranded thing, and it ties into the Missy overarching plot of the series.
I suppose, but barely.
Well, yeah.
We'll talk about that at the end, because that's the end of it's basically Missy comes back and you'll see it for like a brief second. But anyway, so they're on Mars underneath the ice cap, sort of, and there's kind of a bootstrap paradox thing about the ending where they put the God Save the Queen underneath the thing, but it's fine. The Ice Warrior comes up. They mistake him at first for an enemy. The Doctor does, and then it's like, oh, they're on the same side as the Ice Warriors, and that's when I thought, this could be interesting. And I was wrong.
So it continues, and you find that the Ice Warrior wanted to come back to his planet because he was not aware that the Ice Warriors had mostly been wiped out by this point because Mars...
Was this the same one from the...
No, it's not the same one. Very different acting Ice Warrior. The other one was more of a dick, if I'm being totally honest. This one was one of the guards to the Queen Ice Warrior lady. So she revives, and the rest of the episode is an exercise in writing the dumbest, most irrational cartoon characters. And I understand... In Doctor Who especially, there's a theme of people who are afraid often act irrationally and hurt others and lash out. That's fine, but you need to add some new layers or some subtlety to it. You can't just have Guy in literally British red coat yelling like, I'm gonna destroy the savage Ice Warriors and I have a British mustache. I believe isn't imperialism bad, guys?
Right, he even said, like, we're British, nowhere is not our place to be. Like, we own everywhere we touch. And there was also, like, even that cliche, like, Mexican standoff, and then one of the privates misfires and starts a conflict. Like, it doesn't need to be that derivative. It's so... I hate Mark Gatiss episodes of Doctor Who. I knew I wasn't going to like this beforehand.
And, of course, the Ice Queen is... for the most part, until near the end of the episode, just another screaming, I will kill you first, villain, you know, and then they're all acting irrationally. And of course, there's the actual commander, who is more on the Doctor's side, a little more reserved, a little more rational in the face of danger, although he has a history of being a coward, which is...
That felt so shoehorned, right?
It really did. It's one of the most cliche, like, captain... The laziest thing I think you can do in a mutiny situation, in any sort of mutiny plot, which this basically was, is the captain turns out had a cowardly thing in his past, or let people die under his watch, or something similar that people find out about, and thus mutiny ensues. It's just too cliche, even for Doctor Who. I think it's way overdone.
I prefer the mutiny to occur because of the politics between the two people arguing for power.
Sure, that's fine.
And this wasn't that. This was just like, I'm in charge because I'm fucking, that's just next in line.
A good example of that would be, I think, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when Yondu, there was a reason, and you could see the systemic displeasure growing amongst the people of the Ravagers.
Right.
I think that's a pretty good reason for that.
Yeah. And also the way they reveal the motivation behind Yondu and why he's not part of the main Ravager faction with the Stallone stuff. Like, that's a political entity. Like that argument exists without us knowing, and then it unravels over time. And of course, you're sympathetic to Yondu at the end of the movie. If you haven't seen it, no spoilers. I'm just saying, like, that's just the plot. And like, you could do something like that here, where they're butting heads and we don't know the argument. Maybe even the Doctor tries to broach the subject and they just don't talk, because like they sit there down at the table and they don't, like, they're very close to the chest with their desires of what do they get out of the deal, basically. So they don't do that. There's no interesting conversation at all. Mark Gatiss is a smart person. I believe that. I don't think he has ever talked to another human being, though. Like, how is... Well,
I don't get it, because I really enjoyed An Adventure in Space and Time, and I think he did. I know he directed it. Did he write that? I think
I'm sure he had some input on the dialogue, because he's a director. Like, you don't just not.
Maybe. It almost makes me think he does this intentionally, and he thinks... because he's such a classic Who fan, and I can respect that and understand that, but you gotta also understand the show has changed. I think he thinks in his head, this is how Doctor Who is supposed to be. It is cheesy, it's intentional. To him, it's a feature, not a bug, when it really comes off as lazy. It's not an homage to a classic Who, it just feels like lazy writing.
Why can't you do an homage? Oh yeah, the homage of Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, I had to look that up, because I'm a big Doctor Who person. You guys know that. I have no less than 6 illustrated books on Doctor Who lore on my bookshelf. I'm not kidding. I wasn't even aware of Alpha Centauri. I had to look that shit up. But there are... the fact that was a nod to classic Who, and this was an Ice Warrior story made me think Gatiss really wanted this to be sort of a throwback to Classic Who, and it fell flat on its face, in my opinion. Maybe it's because I'm not a fan of Classic Who. That sounds bad, but let me explain. I can appreciate Classic Who for what it is, but unless it's a really great episode, I generally don't think to myself, I'm going to sit down and watch a whole serial of Doctor Who.
I like the canonization of old Who and the implications if I look at it through the lens of new Who. Does that make sense?
It's just the plot and ideas are good. The execution is way too dated.
It is.
And
that's fine.
I actually think An Unearthly Child, for instance, the first episode of Doctor Who, has aged excellently. That you can still watch today and go, oh yeah, this is Doctor Who. Interesting. Although it is obviously very different. I still feel the through line. But, like, let's say you're trying to watch, like, the 5th Doctor. It gets a little rougher, you know? I mean, I don't know. There's some great stuff with all of them, but it's just how I feel about it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You're a Classic Who fan.
I just feel like you can make a classic Doctor Who type episode, and you don't even have to subvert expectations. All of these same things could have happened, but just like add layers to the conflict. Like it was really just bad lieutenant, bad situation. We need to save the people. It was like a Mexican standoff the whole time. 30 minutes of the episode is just them in a room standing there talking to some lizard lady whose makeup was very well done. And but I really hate the Ice Warriors aesthetic anyways. I really don't like the armor.
You know what?
It is.
I appreciate it because it's one of the only Doctor Who villains other than the Daleks whose design has remained almost entirely unchanged from Classic Who. I do like you said, continuity. The reason, even though I don't watch Classic Who very often, though I do sometimes, that's why I need the 6 books, because I need to know the lore. And I appreciate when canon holds strong like that. I really hope they don't do a big Ice Warrior redesign anytime soon. I find it endearing. In the same way the Dalek, even though it's obviously not very functional, it just works. I don't know why. It's why I'm displeased every time they change the Cybermen. They change them all the time. Why? Stop.
To be fair, it's part of the mechanic in their, you know.
I guess
how they operate.
I guess, but still, whatever.
I get it. There's not really anything to talk about in this episode.
No, let's just talk about
honestly.
the Missy thing, and then we'll talk about it next time. So, Missy, what happens is when Nardole does the TARDIS for some reason, which is never explained. Maybe they'll explain Missy did it. I don't know. The TARDIS flies itself back to the college. Also, this is sort of a plot hole in that Nardole has been shown to be able to fly the TARDIS before. Remember, this is again why I feel like it's a progression for the character. He has been able to fly the TARDIS fine before. All of a sudden he can't, though. So he goes and gets Missy's help, and to everyone's shock, I wasn't that shocked because I could kind of tell based on the fact that it's not the end of the season yet. They still need to build up this twist at the end, probably, that Missy's still evil. So Missy comes back and actually does help the Doctor, and the episode ends with the Doctor being so shocked he just kind of looks at Missy, which I appreciate because in the previous episodes we had discussed, does the Doctor believe Missy is really changing? I think this confirmed to me that until this moment, the Doctor really, really didn't believe her at all. Just like the rest of us, he was saying...
Do you feel like he believes her now?
I feel like he doesn't totally believe her. He still thinks this could be a chess move. This is her trying to trick me. But I think he's more inclined to believe her now than he was last week. And I think because of that, we'll get a couple more in the following weeks. We're going to get her doing a couple more things to earn his trust.
To me, that last shot was odd. It felt like they stand there weird. It was a strange shot.
Well,
and I don't really understand what they were going for. It was almost like
they were going for incredulous Doctor trying to figure out a situation. Normally, he's faced with things every day that are so
that's usually a close-up.
I know, I agree. The way it was filmed was odd. I don't know why they did it this way. I felt the same way, too. I could recognize what the writing was trying to get across with the Doctor trying to figure out Missy and Missy trying to present herself a certain way to the Doctor. But the way it was filmed, I don't think got that across in the best way they could have. I didn't go to film school. It almost felt
romantic, the way that it was like down and away, and it had both of them in the frame in the center, and they were like very open stanced with each other, like very almost warmly.
The film,
but it was like it was almost uncomfortable, and I'm really glad they cut when they did because it was getting weird.
The film
And-
language was wrong. I don't know what the
Yeah.
correct way to shoot that was, but I can tell you as a viewer, it didn't
Close-ups
give me
on
the
their
feeling.
heads.
Yeah.
Close-ups on their heads
don't know.
because then it doesn't feel as intimate because their bodies are covered, so it doesn't feel like, you know, when you're open with someone, you take your arms down, you kind of like palms out a little bit, and it was all like that, and it was it didn't feel right given the tone that they were trying to set, like the whole "I don't trust you" thing, and it made the connotations weird, and I don't mean like sexually, I just mean like it didn't mesh, and it I don't know, it confused me.
If I wanted to be not cynical and give the director the benefit of the doubt on this, maybe they weren't trying to get across just the incredulousness of the Doctor. Maybe they were trying to make you feel uncomfortable because that's how the Doctor feels. Maybe in their
Then it
head,
worked.
that's what they're thinking.
That
I
totally
don't know.
could have worked, but I think they should have milked that a little bit more with like a line or something.
They needed to, yeah.
But the idea here is that Missy's on the TARDIS right now, and I kind of hope we start the episode right there.
That'd be good. I would forgive that ending a little bit more if it did start right there, and it would kind of make sense why it cut when it did and the way it was framed. Because that's not the scene. It's the beginning of the scene, but the real scene will be in the next episode. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
So-
I can be fine with that, but yes.
Speaking of which, let's talk about the next episode, The Eaters of Light, which is unique in New Who because it's going to be, as far as I can tell, the first episode of New Who to be written by a Classic Who alumni, and it's being written by Rona Munro, I want to say, who's the person who actually, as far as I can tell, wrote the last episodes of Doctor Who for Classic Who. Let me just double check here real quick. Yep, Survival, parts 1, 2, and 3, 1989, which was the final episodes of the 7th Doctor, from whence after Doctor Who went into quite the hibernation until the 90s when they did the whole McGann movie, but that's probably...
McGann's a great Doctor. Shitty fucking film. We watched that together. Not good.
No.
Don't watch that.
If you want to check out McGann, watch the mini
McGann's
episode.
really good.
Right.
He does audios now, though, right?
He does. If you want to do McGann, watch that mini episode they did before the 50th. I think it was called Night of the Doctor.
That
if you
was
wanna,
really fun.
If you enjoy what you see, he's a very romantic version of the Doctor, and I don't mean that in the loving people sense. I mean in the romantic writing sense when you're talking about like he's a very like look at the beauty of the universe. Look at the vast.
It's right before the Time War too, which is kind of if you like Doctor Who lore and kind of the evolution of the Doctor's mind, I guess that he's a really good window.
If you like a not cynical Doctor who is just in love with the universe, McGann is the one to go with because it's before the Time War, so he's not jaded.
Well, I also like that because McGann is in the Time War, and then he goes to the people to ask, like, I need to be able to handle this, but I can't because I'm fucking Paul McGann Doctor.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's really really good, and I've only seen like a little bit of Paul McGann, but he's definitely in my pantheon, I guess, that I really enjoy.
So, next week, Eaters of Light. Like I said, written by Classic Who writer who wrote the last couple episodes of Classic Who. By the way, if anyone hasn't seen the little final monologue in the Survival that the 7th Doctor gives to kind of close out Classic Who, it's actually really nice. I hope something similar happens when New Who finally does come to a close. Have you ever seen that, Jake?
Mm-mm.
It's actually pretty nice. It's I'm not going to do it justice, so I won't directly quote it, but it's basically the Doctor and his companion. He just finished an adventure in which he defeated the Master for the final time in Classic Who. And Ace, who was his companion at the time, basically said, "What are we going to go do now, Professor?" Because she called him Professor. They had a very similar dynamic to Bill and the Doctor, actually, that he was kind of tutoring her. And he said, "Oh, plenty of things, Ace. We're off to go adventure. You know, any place there's someone in trouble. Anytime there's someone..." Less cheesy than this. It's written better than... There's a reason I'm not a writer. And in there
or
somewhere...
an actor.
Sure. And he's also like, "And somewhere tea's getting cold and we'll be theirs." It was a nice little send-off. And that's how I think Doctor...
That's kind of nice.
I think if you're ever going to end a Doctor Who, like a run of it, like you know it's not coming back for quite a while, if ever, you need to end it with him kind of riding off into the sunset with a companion, knowing, you know, even though you're not seeing adventures anymore, he's going on kind of indefinitely, because that's his thing. He's sort of he's a mythical thing at this point, like Robin Hood.
He's like a mythical constant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
I don't know. This next one, I don't remember a lot from it because I was so just kind of, I was thinking about the Missy scene while this was running.
Yeah, not a lot was revealed in the next time. The premise is Bill, the Doctor, and Nardole are watching a box set documentary somewhere about the Romans or something like that. Bill says, hey, I have a theory on what happened to the Roman army or some Roman regiment that went missing or something. They're watching a documentary about it. And the Doctor says, well, we got a time machine. Let's go find out. And that happens.
I kind of like just the impulsiveness of, well, fuck it. Let's see.
Yeah. And it turns out there's a monster or something that literally eats light, which is a very Doctor Who thing. I think literally, I'm not kidding. Remember like 2 weeks ago, you made a joke when you're talking about Doctor Who-isms and the motivation of the monks. You were like, I don't know, they eat our sunlight or something. You even made a joke about that, like when you're trying to come up with a motivation for the monster that had none was eating sunlight. And now it's actually happening. So there you go. If Doctor Who would like to hire...
Can we agree that that's just photosynthesis?
No, but they like really devour it. It goes somewhere, and you can't have any more of it.
It's aggressive photosynthesis.
It somehow actively makes areas darker, despite the fact that light are particles and not some sort of solid constant. Well, I mean,
I'm fine with it. It's Doctor Who. I just don't...
Oh, sure. I just think that's so funny. The idea of light as like a constant thing that hangs in a room that you can like eat or remove, and it's not like a thing that is constantly being bombarded. Like if time stopped, for instance, you would be blind because photons would no longer be hitting your retinas. That's a biology and physics thing. So anyway, I'm done for this week. I hope we got like the bad episodes out of the way, because we got last week's, which I thought was a letdown to the 3-parter, and this week, which was Gatiss. Hopefully we end strong, because we're in the home stretch. Was this even
really bad? This feels like if you had to get any cancer, you'd choose the cancer that most resembles this episode, because it was so benign. It was just like, meh.
Yeah. So
just kind of spat out into the ether, like, I guess this could be this episode.
Yeah.
This is episode 8.
This was episode 9, so now we have episode 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, so we only got
the Christmas special.
3 episoons left, and then the Christmas special. Should I talk about the rumors about the Christmas special?
We have a lot of speculation. Should we wait? Why don't we do a separate thing for that?
Okay, we'll talk about that another time. So, anyway, until next time, I'm Hugo.
And Jake, we sort of blue-balled them just now.
A little bit.
Sorry, bud.